move over here. Good evening and welcome to the DubHub for our fourth listening session with the League of Women Voters. We hope to do more of them and branch out to other towns within our Peterborough Plus unit. In fact, there is one coming up later this month in Senator Ruth Ward's district. So check out our information on the table about that, and also a place to sign up if you want to know about events. Monica, where did Monica go? Monica,
Yeah.
thank you so much, and other DubHub or Dublin Community Center people who may be here tonight for welcoming us here. Oh, he's going to get his own. Thank you. But of course, but thank you for opening this place to us and promoting the event. You know, we did a meet and greet here in January a year ago, if some of you were here. It was just a warm, great place, sort of the right size, scale, and location. So we're really happy
And beautiful
to use
art.
it again. That's right, this is a new show, right?
Yeah, brand
new
today.
show. Yeah, it's really cool. So take a look around and enjoy the refreshments. And a special thank you to Volker for being, I'm calling you our tech genius.
Okay.
Okay, for recording the session. And I want to thank the steering committee members. Could you just raise your hands? Great, so much. Thank you so much for being here with the refreshments, help running the event, and help running everything, you know, planning and being a real kind of team as we organize our league. A big thank you to our hardworking legislators. We know that you are in the thick of it with the budget process, with committee hearings, public testimony. It's a lot. You care, and that's why you are taking your valuable time to meet and listen with your constituents here this evening. Your work and your willingness is much appreciated. And us, your constituents, we're here because we also care. And we want to be fully informed, engaged partners in the democratic process. So your attendance here this evening means that you're agreeing to the ground rules or guidelines that will ensure an excellent exchange of ideas. Be curious. Seek first to understand and aim to listen as well as speak. We're starting with Senator Fenton leading off with a description of the budget process, where it stands right now after crossover. That might take about 5 minutes. Each of our state reps has got 2 minutes. We've got Susan here with the timer paddles. You can guess what that means. The yellow means speed it up or wrap it up. You've got about half a minute to go, and this means you're done, sort of. It should mean that. And then the green ones are only up here, and that's if the reps want to be recognized to add something or say something as the questions are being answered. Yeah, so each of the state reps, you're each going to give about a 2-minute kind of introduction. It might be about the bills that you're working on right now, an eye to upcoming votes, committee work. So that's going to be, I don't know, 17, 18, 20 minutes. And for that part, we're only listening. So no Q&A at that point, you know, so don't Q&A in the middle of when they're speaking. Hold your questions. Excuse me. No booing, no cheering, no applause. We're simply listening, hopefully with an open mind. Then it's your turn to say or ask what you want your legislators to hear. So you're going to come to the microphone in the center aisle, the way that in Peterborough, at least, we do it for town meeting. And how many of you are from Peterborough? I sort of said, maybe I need a Phil Runyon bow tie. And so when you come to the microphone, if you would, state your name and your town. Then state your question or your remark. It's a listening session, so it's not like a candidate forum or debate where it actually has to be a question. You could have a statement, a remark. But do say whether it's for a specific person. If you want to say, Mr. Ames, I would like to ask you such and such, then we know the question is for you. If it's a more general question, we'll treat it as such. And as the moderator, I will try to spread the Q&A around as much as possible to be fair to all. Speakers are allowed 90 seconds, so between 1 and 2 minutes to make their point. And again, watch for Susan with the paddles, okay? if we all do this, we're going to have a very good meeting. We'll have a good experience for everybody. And I am confident that we can do that. So the greeting panels, right? Did I say that? Okay, can't remember what I said. All right, thank you for coming. And we'll begin with Senator Fenton.
You guys already broke the rules. That's right. No. Well, thank you all so much for having me here tonight. I am Senator Donovan Fenton. I represent District 10, which is most of Cheshire County, and Peterborough, which got kind of lumped in with Cheshire County. I'm in my second term in the Senate. I served 3 terms previously in the House of Representatives, so I've been there almost a decade now, which is a crazy thing to say. I sit on 4 committees in the Senate. I sit on Commerce, Ways and Means, Transportation, and Capital Budget. Capital Budget does not deal with the budget per se. It deals with the capital improvement projects that the state does. So it is a budget in the sense of things. And right now, as Katie mentioned, we're heavily in the budget negotiations. Tomorrow we're having our first budget hearing for the public, our one and only hearing for the public. In the past, we've done budget hearings across the state in the past decade. However, those in power decided they only wanted one hearing this time around. So we're getting one shot at the public in there. And I have a little handout in the back. I was hoping some folks could grab it if you want to. It really tells about what we're seeing in the budget. And this is the House budget. The Senate has not kind of put its hands on it quite yet. We're looking at the Senate's position on things. The governor's position was very different than the House's position. And the Senate's position will most likely be different than the House's position as well. And also the budget's interesting because nowadays we see a lot of policy in the budget, and in previous years we haven't seen that a lot. Some interesting things in the budget is like repealing safety inspections on automobiles. It's kind of a weird place to be in the budget, but that's where we're seeing it. We're also seeing policy like a school cell phone ban policy in the budget, things like that. So it's interesting where policy goes in the budget. You really got to have a keen eye on that. And then the Senate's also looking at amendments to the budget. The Senate usually has positions on certain bills that the House may not have or may not agree with, and the Senate usually works around those, put them in the budget. We table a lot of bills in the Senate to get them in the budget. And certain bills that I'm working on to get in the budget for funding mechanisms are things like community mental health housing, and that's dealing with keeping. If you have a mental health episode, a lot of people go to the emergency room because there's no mental health housing, and we're trying to get that number down to 0. So we're going to put funding for that in the budget. Another thing I'm working on in the budget is free or reduced lunches, raising the poverty rate from 185% to 200% so we can get more kids fed in schools. And then another aspect I'm working on in the budget is our rail trail system. We have an amazing rail trail system here in New Hampshire. It's underfunded. And it's a great economy driver. If we spend a little money here, we can make a lot more money down the road, especially attracting a lot of businesses, things like that. So that's kind of the budget session, the budget season we're in right now. And I don't think I'm taking questions on the budget yet.
No Q&A until later. So I see people running down.
No Q&A until later. But also happy to talk about kind of just what I've been up to this year. Like I said, I've been on 4 committees, which is a ton. Typically we're on 2 because there's only 8 Democrats in the state Senate. We're spread over a lot of committees, and a lot of bills I've worked on, like I just mentioned, was school lunches, property tax relief bills. Big focus of mine this year was just everyday living. That mental health housing. How can we help people in those positions? How can we strengthen our public schools? So not polarizing topics in my opinion, but everything gets a little polarized nowadays. So it's been a busy year. We're still very much so really in the thick of it. This first year in the Senate is when the budget takes up everything, almost every breath of life we have. So the policy that comes after in the second year is usually less of a fiscal note because our bigger fiscal notes come in the first year of the biennium so that we can get it into the budget. And that's my spiel. I guess no questions, so thank you all so much.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have the reps go, and again, go ahead.
Rita, we'll start with you. And so again, if we'll just hold the applause and applaud them as a group, thanking them that way, that'd be great.
He's a little tall. Hi, I'm Rita Matson. I live in Dublin, serving my first term as state rep for Cheshire 18, which is Dublin, Jaffrey, and Ringe. I'm on Science, Tech, and Energy. And right as we stand, we have finished with all our House bills. We do have session tomorrow, so we're going to be voting on some of the bills that the Senate has sent to us. I guess that's.
So how many bills would that be?
Well, all the different committees have, well, tomorrow, I'm thinking it was like 13 tomorrow, maybe?
Is that go out the session day?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm thinking, I don't even know what day it is. Tomorrow we're going somewhere else.
Yeah.
There are 11
On
on the regular
Thursday,
calendar.
okay, so there's 11 tomorrow, on Thursday.
Yeah.
I still have it stuck in my head for tomorrow, so right now, there's still a lot in the Senate. Do you know how many are left?
Oh goodness, between all the committees, most committees are finished up, but I believe some committees have at least 10 or 15 bills each.
So they're still pretty busy, so we'll get all those in the next month or two, and we'll be done for a couple months, so. Anyway, okay, thanks.
Let's adjust the microphone again.
You won't have to adjust it after.
Hi, I'm Jim Quayle. I'm one of your Dublin state reps. I live in Ringe. I've been living there since the year 2000. This is my third term as a state rep. It's also my third term serving on the House Election Law Committee. In the House, it's common that each rep, most typical, each rep will serve on one committee. Since there's 400 of us, that makes more sense in the House than it would in the Senate. So it's my third term as a state rep. It's also my third term on the Election Law Committee, which I find very interesting. And my priorities on election law are to ensure the accuracy of our elections, that they allow us to get an accurate assessment of public sentiment, and that it's done in such a way that we preserve public confidence in the accuracy of the outcome. And this is very important because our whole system of government is based on our governments having the consent of the governed. As the founders put it in the Declaration of Independence, the just powers of our governments derive from the consent of the governed. So that's where I'm coming from in working on those duties. Yes, Senator Fenton's comments about the budget, right? We just finished that process. Well, we finished the first step of that process in the House back on April 10th, and it was quite a lot of discussion and real debate on the floor of the House and even among the caucuses. So, and when the Senate's done, we'll get it back and there'll be more discussion and debate. So, thank you very much for your time. I got the warning there. Be happy to answer any questions if they come up. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jonah O'Ryan Wheeler. I serve the towns of Peterborough and Sharon. I am in my second term. Last biennium, I served on the House Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee. This biennium, I served on the Environment and Agriculture Committee. So this year, we dealt with issues about the out-of-state trash. We have a lot of landfills in our state, and they're being used for out-of-state trash because these landfills are owned by private companies that don't care about the environment, the water, the air, that these facilities are on top of. And so we're having a lot of issues around leachate, which is trash juice that comes directly from these landfills seeping out into the ground soil and the groundwater and the water and across our state. We have a very passionate group of people that are called water warriors that come up from what's the Forest Lake water reservoir up in the Dalton area, where they have a landfill being proposed there, but it looks like thankfully we'll have a moratorium on landfills, which will stop that from happening. But it's not the only landfill in the state. There's one in Rochester. There's a couple across the state, which are in dangerous levels of leachate seeping out of them. The level which it's supposed to be at is about 12 inches, and there are some cases where it's over 100. So this is a serious issue that our state is facing that our committee has thankfully bipartisanly addressed, and all of us are working with the Senate right now to try to come up with a deal, whether it be through the budget or getting one of our 6 or 8 pieces of legislation that we got done, working very hard to get that done. So pass those bills, Senator Fenton.
Good evening. I'm Lucius Marshall. I'm from down Lake Road here in Marlboro. I'm serving my 3rd term in the New Hampshire House. All 3 terms I've been on Science, Tech, and Energy, where I thought it was going on because I have some very real environmental concerns. I think somebody said it's the existential event of our time. However, I find I'm also dealing with quite a bit with our rising energy costs and try to keep a diversity of sources to have our energy in the community. What else can I tell you? My background, I've been in Keene or in this area for 30 years now. Came from New York State where I worked in arts administration. So I really do see the value of a strong arts council here in the state. I was talking earlier with somebody, and I just hope we can get some money for that. I'm also concerned about revenue because right now revenues are way down. We've had a number of taxes cut to the wealthiest part of the state that affect all of us. And I think our budget should reflect our community's interests. And if we're not able to meet that, then we need to consider fair taxation in order to fund a right-sized government. I don't think anybody would say that right now our New Hampshire government is too bloated. Another of my concerns is extended producer responsibility. I've introduced a bill every year I've been in. I'll be bringing it back to reduce the amount of packaging on our landfills. If you stop and think about it, if your bathtub is overflowing, the first thing you don't do is you don't go grab a mop, you turn the water off. First thing we need to do with our landfills is stop all the garbage going into them, and then we can start dealing with whether or not we need more landfills. So that's kind of what I'm working on. We should be working on that, and I guess that covers it. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Molly Howard, and I live in Hancock, and I serve Hancock and Greenfield in the House. And I serve on the Environment and Agriculture with Jonah. For this, it's my 2nd term, and I've served both terms on that committee, in which we like to brag because we could very well be the most bipartisan committee in the House. I think 87% of our bills go on the consent calendar, which means that they pass either with a unanimous or a very high agreement level when we send it out to the House. So we're pretty proud of that. But what we did with the budget was we did the policy thing that Donovan was talking about. We actually put a moratorium for a moratorium for landfills into the policy part of the budget. And interestingly, we put a lot of work into it last session, the first session that I was in there. It was a very enthusiastic response on the part of the committee to stop this the one up in Dalton, because there's already one up there that's leaching pollution into the Androscoggin River. So we have a precedent for not doing this again. And apparently the governor caught on because she also mentioned it in her talk about the budget as well. So it feels good to actually have that kind of impact in the House, because as 1 in 400, it's hard to make a big difference there. So I moved to Hancock in 2019, and in 2020 I was, I think 20 or 21, I was asked to run, and it was one of those situations where I was really happy to have a chance to contribute to my community in this meaningful way. So thanks.
Good evening. My name is Peter Leishman. I represent Peterborough and Sharon. And before I go much further, I just want to thank the people behind me. I don't think many people, unless like Richard out here that have served in the House or Senate, realize the sacrifice these people make. So I serve on the Finance Committee. I've served on the Finance Committee 9 terms. I've been in the House 13 terms. Try to balance between the majority and the minority and respect the minority and also support the majority. And over the years, I've learned that that's not the easiest position to find yourself in. As far as the budget, I think it's been the worst budget in my 9 terms. We cut over 100 positions from, I say we, I'm speaking for the Finance Committee, but not the minority of us on the Finance Committee, but 99 jobs were eliminated at corrections. We eliminated support of the arts. There's $2 million that was taken away that leverages federal money. That was done. The Child Advocate Office was eliminated. The Board of Tax and Land Appeals was eliminated. The Human Rights Commission was eliminated. So we are hoping the Senate, which will have better numbers, financial numbers than we did, but as I think my friend from Marlborough alluded to, a lot of revenues have been cut. The interest and dividends tax was eliminated, which wiped out $185 million a year. Liquor revenues are down about $20 million. Business revenues are down over $100 million. So it's quite a challenge, and certainly I'm looking forward to your questions. Thanks.
Hi, everybody. It's great to be here, and it's nice to see such a good turnout. And my name is Dick Ames, and I represent Jaffrey and Dublin at this stage. Used to be a couple of other towns involved, and I've had a good time doing it over these years since 2012. I'll echo what has just been said. This has been a really tough budget year, and there are quite a number of hot issues that have been mentioned to some degree. But my involvement as a state legislator has been in the Ways and Means Committee. Most of the time I've been there, but I switched over, it was my switch, to a new committee that was set up to address the issue of education funding, in particular school funding. Looming over us in the legislature, all of us in New Hampshire, is the prospect of transformational decisions coming out of the Supreme Court on 2 major school funding decisions, one of which involves and is named after Conval. Those decisions are in the hands of the Supreme Court now. All arguments have been completed, and hopefully we'll find out what they think should be done about school funding pretty soon. In the meantime, we have to deal with it in the budget, which we're trying to do, but it's a very difficult one because, as has been said, revenues have been cut significantly, and it's very hard to make ends meet with that kind of cut, and in the face of a new initiative, which is draining school money, the voucher program. We can talk about that more when we get into discussion. Thank you.
Let's have a big round of applause. Just for people to know in the back, this is handy dandy town guides to who your reps are, how to get in touch with them. I also have one back there because you mentioned Jaffrey and Ringe. So I have that, which is Harrisville. So anyway, we have those for the towns, and pick them up and spread them around so that people know how to call, how to email, who to call, who to email, etc. All right. Thank you. That's perfect. It's like sort of 26 minutes, and that gives the rest of the time for you all to come up to the microphone. You can create the line like we do in town meeting, or however you want to do it. But so please just your name, your town, your question or your remark, and again, if it's to anybody, you let us know. Thanks.
Okay.
You get started.
Thanks. My name is Gwynne Llewellyn. I'm here in Dublin, and I've lived here it'll be 6 years in July. And it's great to hear the committee work that's being done on kind of granular issues that when you only pay attention to mainstream news, you don't really hear. So it's nice to hear some of those updates. My question since we've moved here is seeing how much of the funding is underfunded everywhere across the state and is so heavily reliant on property taxes, which really hurts elderly and young families. Like, my question when I first heard about it was, does the Democratic Party, first of all, I don't know about the Republicans, but as a Democrat, why is the Democratic Party take a pledge that they won't raise taxes? Like, I just find that kind of insane. And then the second question is, and if that's even true, but that's the rumor I heard when I moved here. And then second is, we know that income tax is the most fair way to tax, and so why doesn't the state look at that as a solution to the funding problem?
That's a general question. Who'd like to take a whack at that?
So the Democrats do not take a pledge not to support an income tax. It's the Republicans, not all Republicans, but it's a Republican platform. To be quite blunt, until such time as, if you will, the Democrats control the House, I don't think you'll see any change in tax policy. The policy of eliminating the interest and dividends tax was a Republican-driven tax reduction, the same as the business reduction and business enterprise tax and the business profit tax. But all of us, I think, that are sitting up here that are Democrats have probably supported, as I have, an income tax several years ago. You'll also probably know that coming to the state, our governors, whether they be Democrat or Republican, always take a pledge not to support a sales and income tax. So that's maybe where you heard Democrats.
Thank you. I see James Green paddle up.
Oh, thank you for the question. My colleague is quite correct. The Republicans, as a part of our platform, will not support income, sales taxes, or other broad-based taxes, just because we believe that the most efficient and effective way to get resources in society allocated is through the private market and the individual decisions of all the people who make up society. There's no number of people, however large, who are smart enough to make the decisions in a centralized fashion that determine how our economy works. I personally took the pledge not to support an income tax or sales tax. Where I've lived in the past, I lived in Massachusetts, I grew up in Massachusetts, and I saw what happened when an income tax was introduced there. There were claims that it would reduce the property tax. It never did. It simply made it easier to take more money out of the private economy, divert it to the uses of government, which those decisions are always made by a much narrower segment of society than those made in the private sector. I do want to point out regarding the budget as it left the House. My colleague mentioned that the Bureau of Tax and Land Appeals was cut. No, actually, you might recall, it was restored during our deliberations. We had some very vigorous discussions, including among the Republican caucus, by the way. So maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, that's secret.
All right, exactly. All right, well, that's it. That's my response to that. Thank you for the question.
Thank you. Who's next for the question? No.
I'm Kate Fuller. I'm from Marlborough, but I'm the town administrator for Dublin, and I have a representative, Quayle. I have a question for you. So my question is about Senate Bill 297 relative to pooled risk management programs, and I just don't understand how this could not provide a huge amount of budget instability for small towns. This is asking towns to have the legislative body vote on money to be put in a trust. So we would have to depend on people voting for that. And then, you're talking about there's budget cuts. So why would you apply more government oversight to a program that doesn't really need it in having the Secretary of State have to be monitoring these businesses?
I'd be happy to address that. And I did get your voicemail, and I did respond to that with a voicemail of my own.
Which is why I'm here.
Excellent. I'm glad you're here because we get a chance to talk in person. I discussed that bill with the chairman of the House Commerce and Consumer Affairs Committee, John Hunt. He's in his 20th term, I believe, in the House, and has been the chairman of that committee for many of those years. And that is the committee which now owns SB 297. I'm hesitating because I'm deciding how much I can say, because He discussed it with me. He told me his plans, and nothing private about that. But on the other hand, between the House, it's interesting in this job because you've got the two caucuses, Republican and Democrat, and we don't agree on a lot of things. So our disagreements, I think, are generally quite respectful. But there's also the House versus the Senate. And talking to John, that bill being in his committee, he has plans for that bill, which I really do believe will resolve all those questions you raised about it. All right, I don't know if I can talk about that publicly or not, but I'm convinced based on that discussion. And as a chairman, he's in a position to know what his plan is, and I'd say he and his committee are, pretty much get along. I hope that helps for now. But I think your concerns are going to be resolved.
Thank
And if I
you.
learn differently, I will let you know. Thank you.
Hi, Tom Burgess from Peterborough. I'm curious why we're putting a tax on people on Medicaid, because to qualify for Medicaid, you have to be poor. And therefore, you don't have a lot of money. If you can't afford the tax, I assume that means you're going to lose your Medicaid. It doesn't seem to make sense that we're cutting a tax on dividends and money that's passively being invested, not earned in a paycheck, and yet we're putting a tax on the poor. So that's my question. Why is that? I don't understand the logic of cutting the taxes to the rich and imposing them on the poor.
I can't really answer why we do that because I also don't see the logic in that at all. But when you're sitting on the floor and those votes come up and you do sort of do the calculations in your mind about who we are willing to stick it to and who we aren't, it's pretty painful. I think what the penalties that we're applying to Medicaid this time around are outrageously high. And I am very sympathetic to people who rely on that because those numbers are just unmanageable.
Yes, sure, please.
Tom, thank you for the question. It's, I think you got to go back to kind of history of why we're in this position, right? Why is this budget one of the worst budgets Peter's seen in how many years?
9 terms.
9 terms, okay, so it was this big 9 terms ago. But, and it's mismanagement. For the past decade, mismanagement, the past 5 years, mismanagement. We just talked about the interest and dividend tax is gone. Business profits taxes are down. BET is down. Liquor's down. Almost everything's down except for utilities tax. So revenues are either non-existent or down right now. And so when you're trying to balance a budget, if you're the governor of the house, you got to figure out a place to cut money from. And, that's where they're cutting money from right now. And is it right or wrong? That's up for you folks to decide. I know what it's wrong in my opinion, but also you're the voters. You guys decide who you're putting in office. You decide what the budget looks like. And that's what we're going to hear tomorrow, especially at these finance Senate committee hearings.
Can I just add a second, because I don't know the answer to this. If I was on Medicaid and I couldn't afford to make my payments, would I be kicked off Medicaid?
Yeah.
Oh, wait a minute, I think she was, were you waiting in line? Yeah. I would say if people are waiting in line, come up a little closer so you'll be visible. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't even think I need the mic. I got a really loud voice. From New York. So I'm Patty Long. I'm from Peterborough. And I had a question about the education freedom accounts. And before I ask the question, I would like the people that are in the audience right now to raise your hand if you know what an education freedom account is. Wow, I am very impressed. Okay, that's good because many people do not know what it is in Peterborough because I've asked many people. So I'm looking here and it says they're going to spend an additional 30 million to expand it. Now, according to a screen I had seen on the budget line, it was 70 million. So is that taking into account what already is set aside for the education freedom accounts, and they're adding an additional 30? Because according to, I saw a presentation on the budget and it had allocated 70 million for the education freedom accounts. So is that an additional 30 to which is already in there? That's my question.
So I'll take a stab at it. The House members might know better because they crafted the budget. My understanding is that it went from 350% of poverty level, and it's going to go to 400% of poverty level to eventually universal in the second term of the biennium. Is that?
That's right.
Right,
So-
right.
So then the money kicks up more so that, it doesn't matter what your income is, you can now accept
Right,
education.
right.
We call them vouchers, by the
Right,
way.
right.
That's a certain person's
Well-
name, this gentleman's name. We call them vouchers. Their
But
name for
we
them
were
is
told
education.
at one of the hearings that we were not to call them vouchers, they're I'm not saying anything to you at all,
Hell, we
but they
call them
said,
whatever we want.
I've been calling them exactly what they told me to call them. So I think that budget line is 70 million. And that is a lot of money for an education freedom account when we are already trying to fund public school, trying to fund charter schools, and we are in a state that has its tax structure that really doesn't have, we are the people paying for this. So, and I know that she's giving me my sign, but this is a very concerning, because when I look at the sheet, every single thing is cut, and it's the EFAs that are getting the money. And that is what I would like this panel to really speak to us. Oh, and I do want to say one more thing. Thank you for your efforts and your dedication, because I did not realize that this was not a paid job.
$100 a year.
Yes, Dick.
Just add a few words to this, and but first a word about Patty Long, who came to visit with me a month or two ago, and I learned that she is a true dynamo and has taken hold of this issue and run with it. You can see the teacher in her when she asks people to raise their hands. Yeah, the estimate, I don't know exactly how it was done. I haven't explored that, but it's looking at the universality of eligibility, and then after that is a bit of guesswork. What will the participation rate be among those who are already outside of the public school system, whose kids are in the private schools? They will be able to come forward now if this eligibility threshold is changed and claim their right to a voucher, get $6,000 where they weren't getting anything before. And how many of those, what proportion of the 15,000 or so that are in private schools and homeschooling will come forward to get that extra money that they're going to be entitled to is anybody's guess, but it's probably going to be a pretty high percentage of the 15,000 people. And I think the red light is on. So, yeah.
Come on up to the next question.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
What's your question going to concern, sir?
My name is Richard Sanders. I live in Peterborough. And for background, most of my career was in teaching other than my Air Force days. And the majority of those years were right here in the Conval district at Conval High School. And I'm going to make a very pointed statement, and I hope anyone here would like to say you are wrong and defend why you think I am really wrong. My comment is, I feel in this state, our public schools are under attack. And there are all kinds of little games being played to make it so. And I've been following all of this for a long while, and this is exactly what I see. And I'd like someone to tell me, oh no, that's not the case. I've heard so many arguments of all this wonderful freedom account stuff and everything else, but those are my feelings. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I certainly respect the gentleman's right to his feelings, of course. I don't think he's correct, and I think, by the way, yes, on our caucus, we do not use the term vouchers. We don't believe they are vouchers. The emphasis in education freedom accounts is on the fact that students are all unique and different, families are unique and different, and the existence of education freedom accounts is intended, and I believe it does, ensure that children and their families can find the best fit in our educational system for each child. Regarding possibility of being unlimited and how many people sign up, there is, I believe, an amended version of the bill that came from the Senate, which will put a cap on the number of students who can be enrolled in the program at 10,000. If it hits 90%, it goes to 12,000, and then they start prioritizing who will get into it. So it is under control. I think it is a benefit that recognizes the uniqueness of every child and their individual needs when it comes to education. An obligation which we have, of course, to educate the next generation, and we think this is a better way to do it. The education freedom accounts. Thank you.
Lucius, I saw your title first.
Thank you. Richard Sanders, first, thanks for teaching music for so many years. Yeah, I thought I recognized the name. I can't dispute what you're saying. I think we're attacking education on every level. And I won't say this among Democrats, I'll say it among my people, we don't call it DFA, we call it a scam. It's against the Constitution of the state of New Hampshire to provide public money for private and religious schools. And personally, I don't care what anybody's religion is. I have my own beliefs. I do try to follow them. But when I walk in the State House, I'm an atheist. And I don't think we have any business funding religious schools. And it's even worse when we don't follow through and have any kind of watching for where that money goes. There's no watching where this money goes right now. There's no guardrails whatsoever. It's like I said, I don't call it a freedom account, I call it a scam.
I'm going to call on Senator Fenton, just at the Senate voice.
Well, I share your sentiment. I'm a graduate of Keene High School, and I always say that, I wouldn't be standing up in front of you without the tools that education gave me. And now my son's starting in New Hampshire public schools, the same kindergarten I went to. And you're right. And it's not only about the education freedom accounts. We just passed a Republican bill, which is stripping transportation for half-day kindergarten students. What is the purpose of that? We're also seeing bills that dismantle teacher requirements for teaching so that anyone can become a teacher, which may sound good in theory, but, I know a lot about computers. There's no reason I should be teaching computers in a high school, things like that. And, we're just seeing, book banning bills as well. We're seeing this national attack on public education, and it's trickling down into our state here. And it's wrong. We're underfunding our schools, like you said, and as Lucius mentioned, Rep. Parcell, there's no guardrails for the private schools. Yet we're giving them all this public funding, and same with chartered public schools. A chartered public school can go buy a rundown building, and now the taxpayers have to fix that building up. They can now be in the public school system where the public school aid, where we are responsible for fixing up that building. So I share your sentiment, and wish I could say there's more that we're fighting for. Fighting for this, but it really comes down to just being in a minority.
You can see this is an issue we could, but I see other people lined up with perhaps other questions.
Well, I'm sorry to say that this is the same issue.
Here we go.
In Dublin, 50% of our students are in private school or being homeschooled. And I only know this because when you look at the census of 2000 and you look at the number of students that we have going to the Conval school system, it's about 50%. And so if you extrapolate that across the state, 70 million isn't going to be enough if you remove a cap on who's eligible for EFTs. I'm sorry, EFAs. And so I'm concerned from a budget perspective. There's just no way that individuals who pay today and they freely pay to have their children go to private school. Also the same individuals that have tax accountants, finance people, all on their team, they're going to put in for their $6,000, all of them. And I think that we have to count on that. And it's an incredible cost to the state and to the budget. And out of all the things you said that were cut, this is one thing that we don't need to do. These individuals are already making a choice for their education and they're paying for it. And I think that's a fair thing to do. I'm mostly concerned about no cap.
One comment, one green tile, Molly.
But in New Hampshire, we are the 50th in funding in the whole country. We contribute as a state the least amount of public schools out of the whole nation. And yet we rank somewhere between the 5th and 6th most educated students in the country. And the reason we do that, we are able to achieve that is because we value public education. We pay for it with our property taxes that are going up and up and up in order to support this thing that we value so highly. But when we saw the governor present her budget this year, she did this motion, which was reminded me of Qigong a little bit. She said, we're pushing the control down. What they're really doing is pushing down the funding down. And that is, and we are willing to pay these taxes. It's hard and we're willing because I guess we can't avoid it. But we're willing to do this because we want to educate our children, and we have been effective doing that so far. But you really need to elect people who will put the responsibility back on the state because it's in our state constitution to pay for it out of the state coffers.
And again, name and towns would be great.
Yes, hi, I'm Susan Peters from Dublin. I have a question about the Renewable Energy Fund, which as I understood it was sort of a gradually built up pool of money that could help our state diversify our electricity sourcing, and something that we know is really important so that we're not just dependent upon, traditional sources. So by diverting the money that has gradually been building up in the Renewable Energy Fund, the benefit of that, where it's going to be then spread out among, in effect, all taxpayers, which will sort of be a de minimis benefit to individual taxpayers, and yet a huge loss in terms of our state and our efforts, both for clean energy and for energy diversification. Somebody in the committee could comment, please? Thank you.
Science and technology.
Sure, whatever. And thanks for the question. I do serve on the Science, Technology, and Energy Committee, and that money that was going for renewable energy now is going to our general fund. And as far as I can tell, when you're taking money away from a consumer, you're putting it in the general fund, it's no longer a fee, like we like to use here in New Hampshire, it's a tax. So that's my first problem with the Renewable Energy Fund being used to fund our general budget. Lord knows we need to fund our general budget. And I do believe that there is so much denial of science on the STD committee that that is worked out to be a war on anything that's not petroleum. We're going after biomass, we're going after solar, we're going after wind. And we're just pulling the carpet out of everything that would actually help to lower our costs, decentralize our grid, lower transmission costs. I could go on and on about this, but no, because we have to dictate from outside interests, and one of them would be Americans for Prosperity, to only support petroleum-based initiatives. This is why we're seeing this happen.
Thank you.
Rita, did you want to add?
No, okay, I'm good, yeah.
Hi, hello. I'm Jeff Dickler from Range. I have a question.
If you don't mind, could you give priority to people who are from the towns, the District 10 towns?
Well,
Is it rent?
Quayle.
Well, okay, Quayle, but it's Dublin, Harrisville, Hancock, never mind, I'll let you have
He
it.
gets one of my constituents.
Yeah,
Sure.
mine's-
Fair
I'd
enough.
agree to
Yeah.
sue. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
And I was just saying it was the District 10 towns, I apologize, Jeff, sorry.
I would like to address this question to Representative Mattson. When you introduced yourself, you were unspecific about what bills, if any, you're working on. Could you please enlighten us of the details of what you're actually working on and where you're at, where your philosophy lies with these? Thank you.
I do believe that. I did say our committee is done with bills right now. All the House bills that have come to our committee have been, we've had the hearings.
What
And we've
did you
been-
work on?
Well, there were 74 of them, so we did, I don't know, there's a bunch of them that, let's see, pick a favorite, one you guys love. Oh, we did one on offshore wind turbines, and we decided that that's not a good idea because to have an offshore wind turbine, it disturbs the animals in the ocean. It pollutes the ocean, and it's not something that is sustainable in the ocean. So that was one of the bills that the House, and Lucius voted for it, and I voted against it because I just don't believe that wind turbines are the way to go in the ocean. So that's one of them. So
Do you read the science on these? Or
Of course
do
I
you
do.
just come up with this attitude?
Oh, Joe.
okay, so here's the thing: if you take a 300-foot turbine and you put 90 gallons of oil in it, and you have to change that oil every 3 months, and this turbine doesn't last 2 years, that is not green. You cannot build these things all over the countryside and put them out in the ocean because they're worse. They're not green. And people that believe they're green power are wrong. You can read up on it. You know, there's so much energy, there's so much talk about, oh, it's green, it's green, it's green. They're not. They're pollutants. They kill animals out in the ocean, and you guys are just wrong. And you can say you're right, but it doesn't make you right.
We're gonna continue on.
There you go. I get a little excited.
It's all right, it's part of the listening, we're all right.
My name is Albert Llewellyn. I live here in Dublin. Just been thinking about what you said earlier about money going to private interests versus public. To me, there's the people you talked about in the legislator being a narrower set of people that are making decisions, but those legislators are supposed to be representative. So they are representing a broad group. They're not looking after their own personal interests. They're looking after the public good. So there's a fallacy in thinking that cutting taxes for the rich so that those people can make a bunch of decisions on their own. Those people are looking after their private interests. They're not looking after public good. They're not chartered to look after public good. So I just didn't sit right with me. Thank you.
Okay.
My private interests are not involved. I'm not doing this to make money. I'm getting $100 a year before taxes. So I see this as a public service. Regarding representing the public or my constituents, I believe I am. And being in here for the third term, I think that is backed up at least by my constituents. And I believe that the decisions I make in the votes I cast are in the best interest of the public. I believe that a private enterprise system, an economy, an economic, socio-economic, well, you don't agree, and I respect that. I think a socio-economic system where the emphasis is on private enterprise produces a better result for everybody in terms of well-being. So that's my opinion. We disagree, and I,
waiting.
Yeah, she let me go.
and I do understand that the decisions I make are not going to be agreed with by everybody. That's inevitable for anybody in this room. We know that. So I vote my convictions and my own judgment to the best of my ability, and I believe it's to the benefit of the public in general.
Yeah,
So that's all I can answer. Please say more, but I think I've said what I have to say on that topic. So thank you for the opportunity.
yeah, I wasn't speaking about you specifically. As a representative, you are to represent the broader interests. But if you push money out to all the businesses, those guys aren't interested necessarily in the public good. For example, polluting landfill. You're not gonna get a bunch of businesses that are gonna get behind the effort to clean that up. That's a public interest and needs to be driven by our representatives. Thank you.
Hi, Christy Green, I come from Dublin. I would just like to remind you all that everything is connected. So you have one issue here, you make a cut. You have one issue here, you make a cut. You have one issue here, you have to make a cut. And who falls out at the bottom? Because there are a lot of people falling out at the bottom right now because different decisions are being made. And it's a balance, sir, I believe, between the private sector and the public sector. And we are out of balance, I think. And so one of the things that I think shows us that we're really out of balance is the educational freedom account. I believe I'm one of your constituents, and I want to let you know that I do not support you on that particular issue at all. I also believe that there are systems in place that have been there for the good of people. Public education is one of them. And I do believe that it's socially engineering out of existence soon. So please, in this day and age, I've worked in education for 40 years in the field of education. And guess what? People, all of those people, the majority of those people have wanted just what you said those accounts are supposed to do for students. You make each individual child be seen and heard and grown. And so that's happening already. And these particular accounts, in this day and age of where we are with our spending, we cannot afford them. And so please do not drop more people out and damage our, and I'm sorry, sir, if I'm boring you. Please, well, you're just reading, so I just wondered.
Reviewing notes relevant to your comments.
Pardon me?
Reviewing notes relevant to your comments.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And again, I know you guys walk such a delicate line. Thank you for all your efforts. They're appreciated, but not always agreed with.
I'll just say one more.
Okay.
But I just want to say one more thing about the voucher program. This program has no guardrails on it. There's no income verification on it. So once you qualify for the program, you're in the program. This was started off as about $100,000 is what it was pitched to us. And now we're 70 million. So we talk about fiscal responsibility and where is it when it comes to this program? That's the hypocrisy that I see with this program is that, when we're trying to balance a budget, when we're trying to work through these programs, there's no other program in the state like this where there's no checks and balances whatsoever. And that is what is so dangerous and scary about this program.
We are at time. How many people have questions or statements? How many people are lined up at the microphone?
I don't think.
1, 2, 3. Do you want to do a very quick, what your question would be about, each of you? Just like a 30-second or comment, just to get them in the air, and then we can see if people, yes, Jim?
In the interest of being, I have a concluding remark as well. Since I'm going to do the caucus, 30 seconds.
Oh,
Why not?
I think that's fair. Can we just find out, because some people may actually
Question, maybe what the topic, or statement what the topic is.
Education under attack.
Okay, next behind you is the question, comment about what?
Partly education and partly to respond to the earlier speaker who wondered why we don't have broad-based taxes. I moved here from New Jersey, which has to be one of the highest tax states in the country.
I think she's asking you
I'm
to
just
hold
asking
your
what it would be
question
about, just
until
to
she
see
finds
what
out how
else
many
there
of
is.
us
And
there
and
are.
the last,
Yeah.
one more person was lined up, so that would be Dick
But I think
McNamara.
you're gonna
What's your question about?
I just wanted to hear someone addressing the home rule. I've heard some people, when they like it or they don't like it, it seems to change with the wind with people. And I'm thinking about House Bill 511, which was just gone over to the Senate recently, and I hear a lot of people talking about, they don't think home rule applies here. I disagree.
Okay, so what I'd like to do, break the rules a little bit, but you'd like to add something. I didn't really build in closing statements, but you've just heard a few more things that people are concerned about. Why don't I give you each, again, a minute and a half to say whatever you want to say, either to one of these questions, you know.
I'll go on.
You'll go last. All right, then I'm gonna start down here. Yeah, because we went this way, now we'll go this way. So, again, open to you, whatever you want to address.
Okay, well, thank you all for being here. This was advertised as a listening session, so I've been listening. And I hope others have been too. I did have in my folder a little article headline, former Monadnock superintendent leaving education. This is Lisa Walker, who's left the Monadnock Regional School District. And it was a superb superintendent and is leaving because of the renewed climate of political attacks. So that's responsive to somebody's observation or question about how people are feeling this within the public school system. I just think what I want to leave you with is that this is as hard a budget situation as I've ever seen. And it's also an angry environment that we're in. Makes it harder to cope and to talk across lines, but and thus I see no quick resolution of this outside of the election that's coming up in a year and a half, in truth. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
To answer your question, Richard, I'm against taking more and more control away from our communities. Recently spoke to the issue of 511, forcing communities to accept ICE coming into our communities and taking people out of communities. It's a serious situation, and it passed the House kind of on a partisan vote, and it's now over in the Senate. But I'm going to be very blunt, because I've been there up in Concord a long time. My kids went to school here. I went to school here, and New Hampshire is changing for the worst. As this gentleman said, our education system is under attack. This state is under attack. I serve with some very capable people that represent, looking for the right word, but they're looking for us to secede from the United States. They want less government, and they're in our government now. And they're in the majority in the House and the Senate. And voting does have an impact. And what you vote for is what you get. So these people are in power, not that they seized power, but they were voted into office in the Senate and in the House. So I say that following up on Representative Ames, nothing is really going to change until the next election. You need to get out and vote.
I'm not an economist, but at the end of my first term, I realized that we had basically canceled almost every form of revenue in New Hampshire. And I wondered, what were we gonna do this session? What they did was they scratched back out of every agency, the ones that we didn't close down and take back their money. We required them to give back funds from the last, that we'd given them before. So this lack of revenue is a real problem, and scratching back, which they're doing at the national level as well, is not going to advance the cause of the state at all. So we really need to think about forms of revenue that, that may sound painful at first, but I've been talking to this very extreme libertarian who had this idea for a thing called fair tax, which is a sales tax that, that has a rebate at the end of the year for every citizen or for everyone who pays taxes or whatever. I'm not sure exactly how it would go, but that makes it a less regressive tax because the amount that you give back would sort of make people who are in the poverty level whole again. So that might be a more palatable broad tax, but just to finish up, I heard early on that if you try to advance a broad tax in New Hampshire, it's political suicide.
Yes, such happy notes. Dark money is really enemy of our democracy right now. And they're the ones that are funding such organizations as American Legislative Exchange, ALEC. And we're not, education is not only under attack here in New Hampshire, it's under attack in every one of our 50 states. We can see where these alleged freedom accounts are going. All you do is look at Arizona and look what's happening there. That's dreadful. So what do? We need, when I go in the house, every time they hand me a little gold sheet, I always say no. It's from the Americans for Prosperity. And they want to tell me how I'm supposed to vote in order to avoid being primaried. So that one thing earlier about how much this affects us, if you don't make the right votes and you're in the wrong party, you'll be gone. You won't get any of that campaign support. We need real campaign reform. And I think before anything else happens, we need to recognize that we have a broken system. Too much money is flowing in. Thank goodness for Jean Shaheen, who has come out once again to try to overturn Citizens United. I don't want to be there in many things, but this is one big one. And I'm just hoping that we can salvage something of our democracy by doing something that most electorates feel is a reasonable thing, campaign finance reform.
Well, thank you all so much for being here and staying engaged. And it's so important to come to these listening sessions, hear your elected officials and hold them ultimately responsible. We talked a lot about the budget tonight. In my opinion, this budget isn't just, irresponsible, it's wrong. When we're talking about taxing poor people to get health care, I think that's a tremendous disservice to the entire state. And, it's important that you guys stay engaged, not just in October, but tonight and tomorrow. And for the rest of this session, because these small, state senators, our state reps, we're making big decisions that affect a lot of lives. And I would say that your local elections are more important than your federal elections, because we're seeing scary things happen at a local level, and a lot of people don't understand how their local government works, how they can get out to testify, how they can stand up and say this is wrong. So I'd encourage you all to figure out, if there's bills that interest you, please go and speak at the State House. If there's parts of this budget you do not like, call your representatives, call your senators, express to them that you don't like that. I've had so many constituents reach out, business owners saying, we're going to move our business out of state if this goes through, or we're going to take our kids out of school and go somewhere else where there's better public education. I own a business in Keene, and when people call me asking, and I'm trying to hire a prospective employee, they ask, well, what's a childcare situation like? And I go, well, it sucks. And they say, okay, well, what about the housing? Well, that sucks too. All right, well, what about your education? Well, we're dismantling it, funding it right now. So, but anyways, you should come and move to New Hampshire. Folks, elect people that are going to make New Hampshire better. That's what I just want to say to you. Thank you.
Donovan sort of stole a little bit of what I was going to say, but I was going to relay a story about HB 238, which was legislation this year proposed to get rid of a number of different curriculi within the school curriculum, things like robotics and art and music and things that are pretty essential to a student's daily life. This legislation went viral online. 30,000 people signed up in opposition to it. People came to testify. Hundreds of people came to testify. They had to move the committee room into Reps Hall so that people could be heard. And ultimately, the committee voted unanimously against the bill moving forward. And it went onto the consent calendar, an expedient to legislate, meaning that the bill was dead. So I agree we have to wait for the election, but we don't just have to wait. There are moments where we can get involved, get engaged. There are opportunities like this to have conversations. The House calendar, the Senate calendar is available online at www.gcnh.gov. It looks like this when you print it out. It has the daily activities of the legislature in it. It has the legislation that the legislature will vote on at each session in it. Everything that the legislature does, everything that every single person in here does is public knowledge and is available on YouTube. We are very, there's problems with New Hampshire, but this legislature has been chartered since 1680 and will not end because of a couple of bad bienniums. The state is much larger and much long-lasting than people give it credit for. And as long as the citizenry stays engaged, I do believe this Republic of Citizens will work, but people have to stay engaged. So thank you.
You two work it out.
Well, thank you all for being here. This has been a treat to hear what you think. I think it's been interesting because I think you've all gotten a little taste of what it's like to be in the New Hampshire State Legislature. Given the differences of opinion that exist between us in the House in particular, between the House and the Senate. And we have a system of government that I think generally works. It allows us to work these differences out by way of voting. And being on the election law committee, I'm particularly interested in that. And I agree with all of you with everything everyone said about getting out there and voting, because that is how we determine where our government's going. Now, to add a little perspective to the discussion of budget cuts, I'm reading this because I want to be sure I remember correctly, which is why I was refreshing my memory as you spoke. Thank you, the lady in the back. The budget generally, as I understand it, on the election law committee, not the finance committee, general education trust funds, that's basically the money that's raised through the taxes we have. That's going to be cut, that budget's going to be cut by 1.17% out of 6,179 something billion. All right, the federal funds, which we depend on what the feds decide to give us, but that's up 8.43%. That's another 5 billion portion, and about 4 billion is other funds, which I believe are from monies raised for specific purposes, like the highways. Right, that's up 5%. So in total, the state budget total funds is up by 3.52%. So I do not consider that a disaster. I can't speak for it being the best of the worst of the last 20 years or whatever, but nonetheless, I think it's manageable. We are managing it. And we are required by law to have a budget that meets the revenue. And the revenue protections in the House Ways and Means Committee, I'll be done in 1 second. I'm almost done. I'm sorry. But, we depend on the revenue projections and we have to meet them. We have a constitutional obligation to have a balanced budget. The Senate assumptions on revenue are probably different and they may prove to be right as we get more numbers in from this biennium. So thank you all for being here. It's been a true pleasure to hear what you have to say and discuss things with you. Thank you.
So I'd just like to say that over the last 5 years, we've gotten a lot of money from COVID and that money is gone now. So we've had to cut back. I don't like cutting back on my own personal budget at home. I'm sure you guys don't like cutting back on your own personal budgets, but it hurts to cut back on budgets, but sometimes you have to do it and we just have to do it. So it's not, people think that it's a huge, it's 3.41%.
I'm going to close this off in a second. With, again, huge thanks for everybody. But Monica, I know you have a few upcoming events.
Yes, and I wanted to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this because I think it's so important. Very important for constituents and legislators to have an opportunity to speak and listen with each other. So the more we can have these opportunities, the better. I wanted to also encourage everybody to visit our website. Community center is a wonderful place to gather, to have these conversations, but also to hear music. We have a coffee house and open mic every month. We have an art show reception on Friday evening from 5 to 7. You get to meet the artists. We have a storytelling session every month, led by professional storytellers. Starting tomorrow and every Tuesday, for those who like to play cards, we're having a program called the Weekly Shuffle. So you can come here from 12 to 3 every Tuesday to play cards, and so many other things. So please check out our website, the Dublin Community Center of the DubHub. Thank
And
you.
again, thank you all.